So I want to open up about a few things publicly. Um, I am not a confident person. And despite having had two wonderful relationships with two amazing girls in my past, I also struggle with low self esteem. And on top of that, I feel lonely every single day. Now, I do have a few friends left over from high school. And they're amazing and I love them. But as time goes on and we grow older and older, it's harder and harder to see them. It's not their fault, it's just how it is. They're busy. Now, as a male in his early 20s who lacks meaning and connection in his life, I'm just one of millions of other people who are experiencing the same thing. Now, I felt this way for quite a while, probably about a year and a half, ever since college has started. And as the months and the years go by, the metallic sting of loneliness doesn't really hurt the same way it used to. I have become settled and accustomed to living a life with few meaningful connections. It's become a part of who I am. And this lifestyle I live now has been reinforced and validated by the content I watch on YouTube. In my opinion, all this content exists on a sort of spectrum. On the less extremist and right-wing end of the spectrum, you have literally media edits with Ryan Gosling and Saul Goodman, and videos where people sit in front of a camera earnestly expressing how they don't have any friends. And on the other end of the spectrum would be things like the red pill, the black pill, and incels. This content all falls into the same spectrum because it fits under a common denominator. It all appeals to people who are facing alienation and lack a sense of meaning and worth in their lives. Now, just to be 100% clear, I very much place myself on the less extreme end of the spectrum. I'm not an incel, I'm left wing, and I think feminism is a good thing. I have begun to turn content and complacent in this state. At the same time, I know it is unfulfilling and ultimately unsustainable. I have a lot to say about this topic, so let's get into it. Alright, so today we're going to go on a bit of an adventure, a bit of a journey. I'm going to get out of my house. I've been cooped up in here for the past few days because it's been snowing, so we're going to go out and see some nature, and you guys get to come along with me. So let's go. Alright, so first stop. So I'm going to talk about videos people upload of them sitting in their car or their room and uncut talking about how they have no friends or how they've never had a girlfriend before, stuff like that. As I go down a rabbit hole watching these videos over and over and over, they push me into a mindset that I think is self-destructive and harmful. It's something that's subtle and I didn't notice it initially, but looking back and reflecting, I can see now that it had that effect. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with these videos. In fact, I think that they're cathartic and therapeutic for the people who make them. Moreover, I also think that the people who make these are brave for putting their feelings on display. And so when these people uploaded these videos, they did not intend to potentially cause a slight amount of harm to some random kid like me, but that's the effect that they had. What these videos do for me is they make it okay to feel lonely. And yet, when you watch enough of these videos, I feel like for me, it subconsciously has programmed my mind into thinking that this way of living is okay and acceptable. If this issue is talked about too much, like right now we are over here on this end of the spectrum when it comes to, being open about loneliness. On this end of the spectrum, we don't talk about it enough and we hide our feelings and suppress them because we're ashamed of them. And I think that is harmful. However, we're starting to push the scale over. And I think that's a good thing. But the problem is that for every single one of these videos and every discussion that is had about this topic, it pushes the scale over to the other extreme, which is where it's talked about too much and it's too acceptable to express your feelings and therefore reinforces this lifestyle and makes people think that it's okay to be this way when it's not. We were over on this end of the spectrum and now we are going this way. And maybe the ideal spot is in the middle. I don't think that it's possible to remain stable in the middle of the spectrum. I think that you are either approaching one extreme or the other, and you kind of seesaw back and forth. The reason why I think this is because, when you watch one video, it's validating. It makes you feel like you're not alone in this world and that there's other people who are experiencing the same things that you are. It's tricky because, it sort of zaps my desire to overcome my current state of emptiness or find a meaningful life that exists outside of the internet. This issue needs to be talked about, but at the same time, it tends to become sort of stifling for the people who participate in these conversations. I don't know how it's possible to hold all of us who are experiencing this in the middle of the spectrum, where we aren't just sitting here and wallowing and feeling terrible about ourselves, but also not suppressing and bottling up our feelings. While the internet gives people like us access to like-minded individuals who are experiencing the same thing, I think it also indirectly harms us and keeps us in this position. So, every now and then I read green texts, which are 4chan posts. I don't personally use 4chan. I can't stand that website, but I will visit the green text Reddit because it's curated. I won't read the whole thing, but at the very end it says, fast forward to now, 23, living in a shitty studio apartment, living paycheck to paycheck, no friends or family to contact, and I have accepted that I simply do not have a successful future. Here's a good comment beneath this post that I think illustrates my point very well. Guys like this used to turn into gangsters or pimps or something. I wonder if the internet just gives them a place to swirl around in misery with each other, so it ends up stopping criminal behavior. I think that's a pretty good point. What's up? The snow is melting. There's a bunch of snow that's falling from the treetops, and I keep worrying that it's going to hit my camera and destroy it. I don't know if I can get it on video. Right there. That is going to fall on my camera and destroy it. That's what's going to happen. Knowing my luck, it's like bombs falling from the sky. It's all muddy and gross. Ew. Okay, next topic of discussion is literally me. The simple fact that I love these edits so much is really the reason why I'm willing to critique them so harshly. So let's start up with the original Literally Me edit, this one with Ryan Gosling in Home Residence, the usual.
You look like a good job.
Now the problem with this edit is not the movie itself or how it deals with the theme of loneliness. Rather, it's the nature of these edits and how they romanticize alienation. And, I understand why these videos exist. Because when you are in an unfavorable life circumstance, it almost helps to make that condition into something that is sort of aesthetic or something to be proud of. Ryan Gosling symbolizes a personality type that I think a lot of us almost aspire towards. And I feel like, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like these edits sort of delude people into finding fulfillment and pride out of a lifestyle that is ultimately unfulfilling. Now, is loneliness, is being completely alienated, is it something that's cool to be looked up to? I don't know. How I and other people relate to these types of edits, I think, is clarified by explaining how I look back on the era of my life last year, which is when I was in college. I was a freshman going to college out in Utah. And I'll just show some pictures here. While I was out there, I have never been more alone in my entire life. I was in a new state with no friends, no family. I didn't make a single friend while I was out there, and I was basically forced to live 8 months of my life in complete isolation. Despite living in a big city with 1 million people, it felt like I was the only one left on planet Earth. When I look back on these pictures that I took while I was out there, I get nostalgic and I miss that era because it got to a point where I was so alone for so long that I had not found happiness or contentment in that lifestyle, but more that I had found ways to find happiness, find little bits of happiness and meaning in the long period of my life that was very empty and barren. When your life is so empty and barren, the small moments of meaning and happiness and joy that you find in them, they're magnified and they feel more intense and they have more of an impact on you than when you're, living with other people and when your life is more unanimously fulfilling. The loneliness that I felt during that time was extraordinary. At the same time, I felt this sort of melancholic confidence that I was all alone, taking my first year of college on all by myself, and I felt proud. It's amazing how a singular condition simultaneously gave me unbelievable agony, but also immense pride. But I don't know. I was probably just really miserable, and I sometimes want to go back to it, but now that I'm back home living with my family, I'm less adventurous. I feel less of a desire to, create meaningful experiences and memories because they're already there right in front of me at home. It's a little darker now outside. The sun's gone down. I look pale and blue. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a guy named Hiding in My Room. So, this guy, he's a YouTuber, and he's been talked about before by people like Elvis the Alien. His whole personality and career is basically based off being a loser and being pathetic and having no life. And I love his content. I love his videos. I watch his stuff all the time. And that's kind of sad, but it's really refreshing to watch and see someone who is so brutally honest and who's so forthright with who they are and with the kind of life they live and documenting that. Of course, people on social media, they broadcast the highlights. If you just base your perception of reality off of what Instagram and YouTube shows you, you think everyone lives a wonderful, perfect life. But he almost does the inverse of that. Most people are not as, on the extreme end of how pathetic he is, but at the same time, most people on social media are on the exact opposite end. And while most people's lives are not on this end, they're definitely more, on this end of the spectrum than they are on this end of the spectrum. And I think that's why he's so relatable for many people. Really, you don't need to watch any of his videos to really get a grasp of who he is. You really only need to look at some of his video titles. Now, there's videos like why my love doll is better than a real woman. My love doll gave me a urinary tract infection. Why I have no friends. Why my life has made no progress in the last 15 years. I'm bored of life and suck at everything. I think what his channel really encapsulates is a phenomena that I've seen where people who grow up bullied, rejected, alone, isolated, they go through that for so long and for such a long period of their life that it becomes a part of who they are and it becomes ingrained into them. And I think some people, as a means of coping with that, they capitalize on that, use that almost as a means of becoming a laughingstock and entertaining other people. Now, his channel used to be a lot more popular in the past. These days, it's kind of fallen off. And that's because he's grown and matured a lot. Now, if you look at this comment right here on one of his more recent videos where he kind of reverts back to his old style, you can see people subscribed to his content because they found it entertaining to see this guy fail at life. He discusses in some of his more recent videos and streams that he now feels obligated almost to play a sort of character. And I feel like that is similar to how a lot of people growing up, when they live, just be honest, a loser lifestyle for so long, that when they decide they want to break out of it and reach out and, acquire self-esteem and acceptance by their peers, that they almost feel uncomfortable doing so because it's like becoming a completely different person. This reminds me of a person I knew growing up. He had really low self-esteem and he suffered from depression. As a means of coping, became a class clown. But a lot of the times it was, instead of laughing with the fool, laughing at the fool. Most of the people in our friend group, we were kind of considered the losers, but he was one of the most popular people in the entire grade. And he did that by capitalizing on his low position on the totem pole. And that is similar to how Hiding in My Room has sort of profited from being a low life. And there is a point to where you experience this loneliness for so long that other people view you a certain way, and you changing that is uncomfortable to them, and it's different from what they've known you as. I think for a lot of people, they don't want to, disrupt their surroundings and disrupt their friendships and relationships. And so they refuse to make positive changes to their personalities and their lives just to fit the image of what other people expect them to be, even if it's not good for them in the long run. In my case, I've sort of accepted that I am a loner. And when I call myself a loner, I'm not proud of it, but I'm not upset about it either. It is a way that I have come to accept who I am. I don't know if it's really sustainable to walk around with the self-image of a loner and simultaneously have high self-esteem. Can you view yourself as a loner and have high self-esteem? Can you remove the negative connotations of being a loner and calling yourself a loner? I don't know. But it's getting cold out, so why don't we have a look around? Hello there. Decided he wanted to be in the video. Oh, he's hesitating. There he goes. It's so hot down here.
Like, I'm sweating buckets right now.
So tonight's Halloween when I'm filming this. I'm going to go watch the FNAF movie once I get done with this, but let's just get this out of the way. Now, you might be wondering why I am filming this downstairs in what looks to be an underground cave, which is actually just my basement. And I'll get to that. Okay, this last bit is going to be about incels. Now, like I said earlier, I don't consider myself an incel. I've had 2 girlfriends in the past. Definitely telling the truth. I kind of am uncomfortable admitting this. I simultaneously hate incels, but I also secretly relate to them. I relate to a lot of their experiences of feeling rejection, bullying, feeling unpopular growing up, and all those things. At the same time, most incels, especially some of the more vocal ones, tend to be far-right extremists. A lot of them are racist, misogynistic, and a lot of them are generally horrible people. I despise the incel community, but I can oftentimes relate to incels on an individual basis depending on the person. And that is the case with this YouTuber I found. His name is Decline, and he is a self-proclaimed incel. He's 30 and he's from Australia. Let me show you this first video.
I'm not a young person anymore. I'm a grown man. Not long until I turn 27. I still can't get a girlfriend. I can't even get a date. I missed out on the formative experiences of adolescence. I missed out on the experiences as a teenager and in my 20s, in high school and as a university student. I didn't lose my virginity until 24, and even then it was only to a hooker. I can't ever make up for what I missed out on. And as time goes on, I keep falling further and further behind, missing out on more and more. I'll always be broken from missing out, and I'll only get more and more broken I will never be wanted. Girls will never look at me sexually. No girl is going to want to hook up with me. I'll never be loved or valued or cared about at all. I'm so worthless. I'm trash. Anyway, that has to end soon because I don't have a job anymore and Centrelink rejected me, so I can't get welfare. Any money I spend is coming straight out of my savings, out of my house deposit. I find I can't even try with anything anymore because it's just too late. What's the point?
So what I just showed you is the reason why I'm filming this part of the video down here. Because when I watched it, in the back of my mind, I thought about how he has, in his mind, accepted that he will live a life without affection, without love, but admitting something like that on camera and to yourself is comforting. And I almost imagine the way this guy lives and how he lives his life as sort of like as if I were living down in this dark and damp basement and I did nothing but eat, sleep, and lift weights. And I feel like that is a good, metaphor for how he chooses to live. He has basically given up his silent resignation to living a decent and fulfilling life. And he has sunken into the basement, so to speak. That is a comfortable and warm and safe position, but it's at the same time it's cold and dark and lonely. I think for him, living in the basement is better than living in real life because he himself has never experienced, from his perspective, any of the real true pleasures that can come from living above ground. But at the same time, by sentencing himself to live in a basement, he is permanently cutting himself off from ever experiencing that in the future. The most extreme embodiment of what it is to be a neat incel would be to live inside a sensory deprivation tank 24/7. And I feel like that is the most extreme end of things. And so in a less tragic way, but also in a similar manner, I think that by embracing literally me memes and embracing being a loner, you are sort of resigning to the fact that you are not someone who will experience a life with many meaningful social connections and with many fulfilling relationships, and that in a way it's almost comforting to do that. And so in a way I can kind of relate to his position in life. But now if you look at some of his new videos, it looks like he has a more hopeful outlook on life. Of course, there's a glaring problem with him here. You can see how he still bases his self-worth on validation from the opposite sex and being attracted to the opposite sex, which if you think about it in a theoretical sense, like it is literally impossible to gain a relationship if you have low self-esteem, and you will only allow yourself to have high self-esteem if you gain attraction from the opposite sex, because women like confidence, and if you're not confident, then they won't be attracted to you. In that sense, if you wait for a girl to come and give you self-confidence, you will be waiting forever. Now, of course, it doesn't always quite work out like that in reality, and eventually most people will be able to find someone. But that, I think, is the problem with him and a lot of incels and a lot of people who struggle to get a girlfriend. But at the same time, you can see how, it's an improvement over some of his older videos, and he's trying to take a more optimistic view of life, which is, it's something. But what you'll notice is that a lot of the people on the black pill and red pill communities are unsurprisingly toxic and almost don't want him to leave. It's like a cult. Now, I think that all of these online communities and discussion, to an extent, no matter how subtle, have that kind of effect to them. And I think that's what happens when you build a community centered around something like loneliness, is that it sort of disincentivizes that community's members from going out and, not being lonely anymore. Because if they find fulfillment and happiness, then they have to leave that sense of community they have. And I think a lot of the times people aren't ready to let go of that. Thankfully, I'm not in his position. Well, there may be a part of us who doesn't want to let go because of a fear of reaching out into the real world. Ultimately, we can still respect and acknowledge all this content online without it holding us back from living a fulfilling and meaningful life. I think that there's nothing wrong with living a life where maybe most people are not going to be your friend, but you have a couple of core solid friendships. That is what gives you a fulfilling life. And it's about taking what you are innately capable of and maximizing that to live the most fulfilling life that you can live. Well, it's late, so I need to be kind of quiet, but I'll go ahead and wrap this up. I've spent a lot of time here criticizing myself and criticizing a lot of the content that I watch that's out there, but I think it all has its place. I sometimes wonder what my life would be like if I didn't have the sort of temperament that I do, if I didn't grow up on the internet and chronically online, if I wasn't socially awkward and I was naturally confident, what the kind of person I would be right now. Although I talk about feeling unsatisfied with my current life, I am who I am. You don't have to have a vibrant social life to like yourself. And I'm not sure what's going to come next in my life or who I might be 5-10 years from now, if I'll still be this same type of person. Whatever it is, I know that what's in store for me is what's right for me. And I know that the few friends that I do have mean a lot to me. And although I'm not able to see them very often, the fact that I have any friends at all, I'm very fortunate because some people don't have any. But I'll probably always be this way. Oh well.